911 for what city?
Calgary. Send an ambulance, please. My baby's not breathing.
And what's the address of the emergency?
1624 4th Street Northwest.
And the phone number you're calling from?
555-9781.
What's the problem? Tell me exactly what's happened.
I said my baby is not breathing. I need help right now.
I know this is...
As a first responder, one of the toughest calls you will ever make involves the death of a child.
Is he breathing at all?
No, he's not breathing at all.
Paramedics are on the way. Stay on the line.
Each year in North America, thousands of babies die of sudden infant death syndrome. SIDS is much less common now than it was 10 years ago, but sadly it is still too frequent and is the single greatest cause of infant deaths after the first month of birth. It accounts for a full 1/3 of all deaths between 1 month and 1 year of age. This video is designed to help first responders function as effectively as possible and to offer assistance to those who need it most. The family in which a SIDS death has just occurred.
13-1's on the way.
Now listen carefully. Lay the baby flat on his back on the ground and remove any pillows.
Quick, inside. They're inside. Please, hurry. He's not breathing, sir. They're inside upstairs in the bedroom. He's not breathing.
Somebody with him?
Yeah, my wife. Please, hurry.
It looks like the first response has arrived. Are you able to meet them?
My husband is down there with them.
I'll stay on the line with you until they're with you.
You can stop CPR. We'll take care of him from here. I'll check a pulse. No pulse.
Mom, Dad, let's go out here and let them assess your baby.
During a SIDS incident, family members are understandably overwhelmed by the events and activities around them. Whenever possible, a first responder should be assigned to assist the parents.
What's happening?
They're doing everything they can to help your baby boy. What's your baby's name?
Caleb.
Has he been healthy?
He's been fine.
First responders can help the situation by staying calm and letting the parent talk about the child or anything that puts them at ease. First responders should be prepared to answer questions the parents have about what is happening with their child. Honesty and reassurance regarding the expertise of those helping their child can provide comfort during this stressful time.
I know this is very scary, but you're doing everything you can to help your son. Has he had any medical problems in the past?
No. No, he's been a normal little baby boy.
I'll listen to the lung, see if you can hear any breathing.
Okay, I'll get the pads.
And today, nothing out of the ordinary with his health?
Help me.
Hey, folks. Is the baby upstairs?
Yes, and up and to the right.
Are there any other children or adults in the house?
Yes. No, our daughter's at school.
Okay. Thanks.
It is important that first responders make mental notes of the situation to provide feedback during follow-up investigation. Pay attention to things like where the baby was found, if there are smokers in the house, and even what the family situation or relationships are. It's important not to comment to the parents on these observations, but to remember them for your report.
No breathing.
Okay.
What do we have on the monitor?
So we've got asystole, so no pulse, no breathing, asystole. Guess we'll call it.
We'll call it.
The first responder also has to be very aware of the impact their words and their actions will have on the grieving and healing process these parents are about to undergo.
Let's go tell the parents.
It's very important for first responders to have empathy and compassion towards the parents because they're so scared, they don't know what to do. They are immediately victims in a situation that they have no control over, and it's very difficult for them to think of anything other than even blaming themselves as it is.
The underlying cause of SIDS is not known, but there are many risk factors, so parents can make SIDS less likely, but can't make it go away completely. When a child dies and a first responder attends, there will be shock by the parents and also shock by the first responders. While risk factors are important, the time of death is not the time for anyone to discuss these with the family. The first responder needs to answer questions, but without laying any blame on the family And obviously, they need to be very empathetic and sympathetic to the family.
First responders may come to these scenes with the intent of doing everything they can to help save an infant. The mindset will probably be very much on what skills can I employ, what can I do that's going to change the situation of what no one wants to think of, what no one wants to have happen, and that's maybe an infant that's died at home or wherever they are. And as soon as we recognize from particularly a medical standpoint that there's nothing that can be done, we have to change our mindset very quickly and recognize that the parents primarily, but perhaps the other caregivers, other siblings, or other family that are there, but the parents are going to become our biggest concern or our patient in that regard.
I realize how stressful this must be.
My name's Adam, and this is my partner Christine. We're the paramedics. We've been working hard on your son Caleb to try to bring him back to life, but unfortunately we could not resuscitate him. There's nothing we can do to bring him back.
Experienced first responders know there are no easy rules to follow for dealing with distraught family members, but a show of compassion or a sympathetic attitude can mean a great deal to parents in this situation. The person charged with making the pronouncement of death should sit at the parent's level to communicate with them.
I'm sorry for your loss.
No.
The first responder needs to take time to answer any questions they might have. The pronouncement should never be made, if at all possible, to one parent alone. A spouse, family member, or friend should always be present for support when the pronouncement is made. It could be helpful for families with other children if a first responder suggests getting a nearby relative or friend or trusted neighbor to care for the siblings.
Well, Mrs. Roberts lives next door. Amanda knows them pretty well.
Once the medical investigator arrives, she'll take the baseline history and scene information for the investigation of an unexplained infant death. This includes past medical and social history, recent history, as well as all pertinent scene information. Any first responder handling a suspected SIDS case should be aware that often appearances can be deceiving. A baby who has succumbed to SIDS might display physical symptoms that at first glance look like foul play or maltreatment. These can include a pinkish froth coming from the nose or mouth, a spot of blood on the bed, or bluish-purple discolorations that may resemble bruises. These are normal post-mortem changes. Police and medical investigators are trained to examine the scene of death.
In most jurisdictions, autopsies are mandatory in childhood deaths. SIDS, in and of itself, is a diagnosis of exclusion. It's necessary for us to do an autopsy in order to accurately determine the cause of death, and it's important for parents to understand the need for an autopsy, all the testing that will be done in order to give them some idea of the cause of their child's death. And it's very helpful for parents to know that they aren't to blame for the death of this child. It's also important for parents to understand the need for the autopsy and to know that it will be done as respectfully as possible.
Victim assistance should be called in to provide support if the family members are going to be alone after medical personnel leave.
He wasn't breathing and they weren't able to resuscitate.
Victim assistance provides volunteer members who will stay with the parents and can ensure that any questions are answered and that the parents aren't left alone.
Your brother.
My brother lives here.
Often in SIDS cases, the police become more involved after the pronouncement of death.
You guys arrived first?
We did, and then fire arrived behind us.
And was there anything out of the ordinary here?
No, Dad met us at
The police officer's job has its own unique set of challenges.
but nothing unusual.
Okay, thanks.
The death of an infant is probably the worst call that we can attend. And of those, a SIDS death is the most difficult to deal with due to the grief and the uncertainty that's involved. How you react initially with the parents can set the tone not only for the investigation, but also for their healing process later.
Following a SIDS loss, parents are in an extremely vulnerable state. Anything said to them can have lasting effect, perhaps for a lifetime. With a non-judgmental attitude, police can help to reassure the parents that their questions are just standard procedure, something they are required by law to do. Officers should steer clear of making any suggestions of guilt or wrongdoing. Listening, more than asking, is very important. Asking the right one or two questions can eliminate the need to ask several. Quite often, simply asking the parent, "Tell me about your baby," is enough to elicit all or most of the information required by an investigation.
My advice to an officer is to be as empathetic as possible with the parents, until and unless there's any evidence to prove that it is not a SIDS death. Most of us are parents as well, and as this tragedy could happen to anyone, it's important to remember what these parents are going through, what they would need, and how they should be treated.
Something that first responders need to keep in mind when they're on scene at a SIDS death is that it's important for the parents to be able to spend time with the child, be able to hold the child, but they also need to be cognizant of the fact that as medical investigators on scene, we need to be able to conduct our interview and our evidence collection. There are many religious and cultural factors that play into these events, and it's important that we as first responders are all cognizant of the fact that this is a grieving process and the beginning of a recovery and healing process for these parents, and it is important that they are able to spend time with their child.
One of the greatest things that I appreciated about what the first responder did for me was to offer me the time to have closure with my son. And some of the things that they offered to this day that I treasure most in my life is the lock of hair of my son. It's a physical evidence for me that he lived. And the other thing that I treasure as well was his footprint and the opportunity to hold him and not be rushed, not be told that I have to go. And it's something that I could positively look back and treasure and not feel that, regret that I didn't get that opportunity.
There are a lot of resources available to SIDS families, and sometimes if first responders can give the families information about local SIDS support groups in the area, the families might find that beneficial. They can then call and talk directly to a SIDS parent, and that SIDS parent can also help them get other information as needed.
First responders need to remember that a SIDS death has more than one victim. Much of your time and energy should be focused on ensuring that parents and family members receive the information and support they need. Dealing with people in this situation will never be easy, and every case can have its own unique challenges. The most useful suggestions for conduct during a SIDS death come from the people who have been there, the parents and first responders.
You spend your whole lives trying to protect them or try to be a good parent for as short as they are with us, and for someone to suggest or a first responder to make any kind of assumption, you really grab onto that because you're trying to understand. So for nobody to have made those kind of comments to us was helpful because we weren't dealing with woulda, coulda, shoulda. We were just dealing with the facts as they were given to us when we could take them in.
As a rescuer in a uniform, we have a certain inclination to want to be helping right away. And we have to remember that when our uniform comes off, we're human beings underneath as well. It's not our emergency, it's still a tragedy, and we're affected by it nonetheless.
The first responders that become involved with our SIDS families oftentimes might need to seek supports as well. Sometimes they have young families at home, and in working with a SIDS family, it might be, in a sense, traumatic for them. So it's important that they are aware of supports and information that they can seek out as well.
In some circumstances, for example, if resuscitation measures can be taken, the baby and the parents will go to the hospital. The parents should not drive, but a ride should be provided, perhaps by police. However, if the baby is pronounced dead in the home, the medical examiner will take the baby and an autopsy will be conducted. Here are the main points for first responders to remember. SIDS is sudden and unexpected. SIDS risk factors are not causes. There is always more than one victim. Parents' responses may vary from shocked passivity to violent aggression. Your words and actions will stay with the parents for many years. Some physical signs may be mistaken for abuse. Leave the diagnosis to the autopsy. Be aware of care for siblings, transportation for parents, and the need to secure the residence. Someone should be with the parents at all times. Be truthful about what is happening. Do not raise false hopes. Speak to the parents at their eye level. It is easier to step up an investigation after an autopsy than to diffuse an overly aggressive one. Ensure parents have time to say their goodbyes. Allow them to hold their baby, but do not pressure anyone who is obviously reluctant. Find follow-up support for parents, such as a SIDS support group. As a first responder to a SIDS incident, you'll want to debrief yourself. Seek out a supportive colleague or trained critical incident stress debriefer. It's important to talk through the emotional impact this incident may have had on you. Remember, there are many victims in a SIDS death, and one of them could be you.